In the village of Whisperwood, where every shadow held a secret and every stream sang a lullaby, lived a girl named Oriana. Oriana was bright, energetic, and she loved solving puzzles, especially if the solution promised a great reward. She often dreamed of finding a hidden treasure chest filled with glittering coins, or a map leading to the legendary lost gemstone of the north. One sunny afternoon, Oriana was exploring the ancient, twisted roots of the great oak, a tree older than any story in Whisperwood. She wasn't looking for mushrooms or flowers. She was looking for a secret tunnel, or maybe a loose cobblestone, hiding something precious. Deep within a shadowed crevice between the roots, her fingers brushed against something cold and perfectly smooth. She pulled it out. It wasn't a gemstone, nor was it a gold coin. It was a compass, small enough to fit in her palm, with a brass casing tarnished green by time and moss. The needle inside was made of bright, shimmering silver, but instead of pointing to N for north, it had a tiny, carved heart. The compass immediately began to spin slowly, then settled, pointing directly toward the dense, overgrown path leading into the forest. "A magic compass!" Oriana gasped, her eyes widening. "It must be pointing to the lost gemstone! Finally, my luck has turned!" She quickly adjusted her backpack, secured the compass in her hand, and stepped onto the path, her heart thumping with excitement. The compass, however, kept pointing her away from the towering peaks that usually held legendary treasure. Instead, it guided her toward the dusty back road that led to the town's edge. "It must be a clever riddle," Oriana muttered. "The treasure is hidden in the most obvious place. Brilliant!" She followed the silver needle faithfully, convinced that at the end of this strange journey, a magnificent reward awaited her. After walking for nearly half an hour, the compass needle slowed its movement and stopped, pointing directly at a small, broken-down wooden bench. Oriana's face fell. There was no sparkling treasure chest, no hidden cave, no magical sign. There was only an elderly woman named Mrs. Willow, known throughout the town for her quiet life and very old, worn-out sweaters. Mrs. Willow was sitting alone on the bench, struggling to tie a knot in a piece of frayed string she needed for her garden. "Is that it?" Oriana whispered to the compass. "Is she the reward? Maybe she has a riddle for me." Disappointed, Oriana approached the bench. Mrs. Willow looked up, her gentle eyes wrinkling at the corners in a small smile. "Hello, dear," Mrs. Willow said softly. "Are you lost?" "No, I'm following a map," Oriana replied, gesturing vaguely with the hand holding the compass. Oriana waited for Mrs. Willow to offer a clue, a mysterious key, or perhaps a bag of rubies. But Mrs. Willow simply sighed, looked back at the tangled string, and struggled again with the knot. The silver needle on the compass glowed a soft, steady pink, pointing insistently at Mrs. Willow's hands. "It's pointing at the string," Oriana realized, a spark of confusion replacing her disappointment. "May I help you with that knot, Mrs. Willow? My fingers are good at small, tricky things." "Oh, bless you, child," Mrs. Willow replied, handing over the string. "My old eyes can't quite manage it anymore." Oriana focused her attention away from the imagined gold and onto the actual problem. With a few quick, deft movements, she untangled the knot and tied a perfect, simple bow at the end. Mrs. Willow took the finished string and held Oriana's hand for a moment. "Thank you, Oriana. That was such a kindness. Now my gate won't swing open anymore." Mrs. Willow stood up and walked away, humming a tune. There was no treasure, no riddle, and no fanfare. Oriana stood there, holding the compass, which had stopped glowing. She felt a strange mix of annoyance and warmth. "It's the compass of simple help, I suppose," she grumbled, putting it in her pocket. "Not very magical." But as she started walking home, the compass began to spin again, more urgently this time. It pulled her off the main road and down a steep, narrow path toward the Wishing Well Creek. Oriana sighed. She had promised herself she would spend the rest of the afternoon building the tallest block tower in her room. But the needle was so bright, so insistent, she couldn't ignore it. It felt like a gentle, firm tug on her conscience. Following the compass, she arrived at the creek. The needle pointed high, toward the drooping branch of an old willow tree. Dangling precariously from a thorny bush was a small canvas kite. Its string was broken, its tail caught tight. A little boy, no older than 5, was standing below, his lip trembling as he looked up at his lost toy. It's Flying Dragon," the boy whispered, tears starting to form in his eyes. "He flew too high." The compass needle pulsed pink, focusing its energy entirely on the little boy's distressed face. This was the second quest, and it required effort, height, and careful maneuvering, much harder than untying a knot. Oriana looked at the branch. She could climb it, but it was muddy and looked quite slippery. "Don't worry," Oriana said, dropping her backpack. "I'm good at climbing. Wait here and hold this for luck." She handed the boy her compass, which immediately felt cool and smooth in his small, shaky hand. Oriana started her ascent. The bark was rough, scraping against her knees and hands. She stretched and struggled, testing each foothold before trusting it. She had to climb very high to reach the kite's string. The small boy watched from below, his worry temporarily replaced by awe at Oriana's bravery. Finally, Oriana reached the branch where the kite was trapped. The thorns were sharp, catching the threads of her jacket. Carefully, slowly, she untangled the long, delicate tail and loosened the knot holding the main string. The little boy cheered loudly when he saw the kite finally flutter free. Oriana climbed down, exhausted and a little muddy, but safe. The boy rushed forward, grabbing the kite and hugging it fiercely. "Thank you! You saved Flying Dragon!" He handed the compass back to Oriana, and she noticed the color was now a warmer, deeper shade of pink. "What do I owe you?" the boy asked, pulling out a half-eaten granola bar from his pocket. "Nothing," Oriana smiled, genuinely this time. "Just promise to fly Flying Dragon safely tomorrow." She walked home, tired but surprisingly happy. The glow in the compass faded again, but the warm feeling in her chest remained. Maybe this is what the compass finds, she thought. Not gold for me, but good feelings for others. The next day at school, the compass was silent until lunchtime. During recess, Oriana was excited to join a big game of tag on the playground. She loved to run and was usually the fastest. But just as the whistle blew, the compass began vibrating rapidly, pointing towards the quiet, sunny corner of the schoolyard. Oriana sighed, hesitating for a moment between the exciting chase and the magnetic pull of the enchanted artifact. She chose the compass. Running to the corner, she found her friend Maya sitting alone under the big maple tree. Maya wasn't reading or playing. She was just tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick, looking sad and distant. Oriana had expected to find a lost item or something broken that needed fixing. The compass, now glowing an extremely bright, almost red-pink, pointed right at Maya's face. "Hi, Maya," Oriana said, sitting down next to her friend. "Why aren't you playing tag? You're usually the best runner." Maya shrugged and continued tracing shapes. "I don't feel like it. Everyone thinks my new shoes are silly." Maya was wearing bright, sparkly shoes that Oriana thought were actually quite beautiful. "They were laughing at me when I tied the laces," Maya whispered, close to tears. Oriana realized this quest wasn't about physical help. It was about fixing a hurt feeling. She put her hand gently on Maya's shoulder. "Those are the best shoes I have ever seen, Maya. They look like they were made for running fast." "Do you really think so?" Maya asked, looking up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Absolutely," Oriana insisted. "And anyone who thinks they're silly just doesn't know how to appreciate sparkle." Oriana spent the rest of recess sitting with Maya, telling her funny stories until Maya started smiling again. They didn't fix a knot or climb a tree, but they fixed a broken heart with simple, true words. When the bell rang, Maya stood up, her sparkly shoes seeming to gleam a little brighter. She hugged Oriana tightly. The compass, which Oriana still held, suddenly flashed with such intensity that she almost dropped it. The silver needle, instead of pointing outward, did a full circle and stopped, pointing directly at Oriana's own chest. Oriana gasped. She looked around. There was no one else nearby who needed help. "Me," she whispered. "Why is it pointing at me? Am I the treasure? Am I lost?" She looked down at the compass, which settled into a calm, pulsing glow, the heart symbol steady. Then Oriana understood. The compass wasn't an ordinary magical artifact pointing to gold or gemstones. It was the compass of kindness. And it didn't point to where the treasure was, but to where the treasure was needed. And by pointing at Oriana now, it was confirming that the journey had changed her. The kindness she had given away was now stored inside her heart. She realized that the reward she had been seeking was not in a hidden chest, but in the good feeling of helping others. The true magic of the compass was showing her how to use her own heart as a guide. From that day forward, Oriana carried the compass everywhere, not as a map to fortune, but as a reminder. She learned that every small act of help, tying a knot, saving a kite, or offering a kind word, recharged her own inner sense of worth. The greatest artifact wasn't the enchanted brass compass. It was the kindness she shared with the world. Oriana's heart, once focused on finding material wealth, became the true treasure chest of Whisperwood. She became known as the kindest girl in town, always ready to follow the pull of the enchanted heart on her little brass compass. What a beautiful lesson about true treasures. If you loved Oriana's adventure with the magical compass, please hit that like button. Share this story with all your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Storycrafts Kids channel for more amazing tales.